Anderson heaving one down the sideline, and he's got Cass Allen over the top. Big side, down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance. Allen deep ball one more time. 58 yards this time.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
Up, LAFB fans, you are listening to the Bruin Bible right now, but we want to bring to you our sponsor for the show. It's Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon finals. I know our guy Madman will be all over that. The big tennis fan of the bunch. Major League Baseball, Dodgers in the midst of a big-time season, highest payroll in the league, 3 MVPs in the lineup. Can they figure it out? The latest fighting news, a huge MMA fight coming up this weekend for the UFC, and even next season's early NFL futures. I know you guys will be hammering the Rams and Chargers overs on the futures for next season. Head to our website to use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LAFB to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. What is up, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Bruin Bible. Your host, Will Decker here, longtime friend of the program, the man, Mr. Iron Mike Regalado. He has been covering fall practice this past week. He's gotten to see the first 4 practices in whole. I'm really excited to get some takes from him. We're going to be talking about some players that have stood out, some interesting quotes coming from the leaders of the team, the coaching staff, things of that nature. We're also going to be talking about the hot topic within UCLA football, the Chip Kelly offers. Is it right or wrong for him to kind of utilize the transfer portal as opposed to going out and recruiting kids at different high schools around the area and throughout the country? And then we're going to kind of get Iron Mike's breakdown of just, the position groups. So I'm really pumped to kind of hear his takes on this. Iron Mike, how has the week been for you thus far and being able to get out to practice again?
Hot. I suggested that UCLA put a dome over the practice field. It's too damn that sun is just it hurts. I can tolerate Los Angeles in August and September because the rest of the year is pretty awesome. But it's back to Chip Kelly's old ways of only giving us 20 minutes, putting us in the far corner. We can't see anything of the offense, and doing mostly drills. Haven't seen one live session. Even special teams, which are in front of us, aren't exactly live sessions because they'll go through the motions of hiking the ball, and the punter or kicker kicks the ball, and the returners just catch it. They don't even return it. They don't go through the motions of return blocking and all of that. So we are seeing some stuff, but we're also not seeing a lot of stuff. But that's, that kind of goes with the territory with the Chip Kelly team. But a lot of what we are seeing is consistent with what we saw in spring, because in spring we were allowed to view the entire 2 hours, which gave us a lot of good information. So what we're seeing right now from the limited amount of time is supporting that. And there are some good surprises, some really consistent, how can I say, not issues, but consistent themes and narratives with certain players and positions. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. One thing I will say is that there are not that many injured players. There were quite a few in spring. Right now, I think there are only 4 or 5 injuries, and not to diminish their positions, but they're not key positions.
Yeah, 2 of which coming from the linebacking room: Ali Cahow, Damian Sellers. Two guys I kind of expected to take a leap this year. Unfortunately, not out there. But that's the position I actually want to start with, because from what I've been able to gather from the media, that's as close as you guys can get to the action, is like the linebacking room. You're seeing our new linebacking coach, Ken Norton Jr., out there, and just the energy he brings to the room. He's a former defensive coordinator. And then first and foremost, he's a former UCLA Bruin All-American at the linebacking position back in the 80s, famously won a few Super Bowls in the NFL, played for the 49ers, Cowboys, and a couple other teams. What has it been like watching Ken Norton Jr. coach these guys up close and personal? Because I have been able to read some of the reports, and everything I've heard has been pretty positive, but I can only take it at its own word. How has it been for you being there in person and seeing Ken Norton work with these young linebackers?
The first thing that jumps out to me is the fact that he is not chewing them out, at least in front of the media area in the first 20 minutes. He's probably chewing them out more, later. But it's in the drills that we are seeing, he's complimentary, he's supportive, he's kind of like a cheerleader, but he's also like, a bit of a hard ass, like, who wants it more? That's good. That's the way, that's how you hold it. That's what you do. There you go. Good effort. Stuff like that. So he brings kind of, there's still that aggressive, defensive coach mentality there, but there's also a lot of, and just in my opinion, it appears that it's still a lot of evaluation. So he wants to see what they can do, how they can do it. And, I guess once we get closer to game day, he'll start, really tightening the screws on individual players, individual positions. But it's been pretty energetic to see him out there leading the linebackers.
And one guy that has really stood out from what I've been hearing from, the reports and things of that, John Vaughns, the two-sport athlete playing linebacker for UCLA. He's gotten some rare praise from Ken Norton so far from the quotes that I've heard. Making plays out there, looking fast, looking athletic. Came in as a defensive back. He was actually a safety when he got recruited here to come to play for UCLA. His inaugural year being 2020. Moved to linebacker last year, and now he's got a former defensive coordinator coaching him up in Ken Norton Jr. Give me the take on John Vaughns, because with Ollie Kayhow out and Damian Sellers for that matter, there's room for someone to really step up and thrive in this defense with those guys out.
He looks bigger. He looks a little bit more confident. He wasn't in spring because he played baseball. So, maybe, hey, let him play baseball again. He should probably be an All-American at this point next year. But no, he looks really good, really solid. I just wish that we would be able to see, like team drills, team sessions, or at least, 7-on-7, something like that, just to get a better gauge. But what he's doing in drills, he's standing out a bit, and he's looks pretty solid, looks pretty confident, and just I think he's a guy who will be able to really contribute to that middle area on the defense.
Love it with John Vaughns. And that's just a segment of the defense. We have 4 new coordinators on the defensive staff. The biggest being the defensive coordinator himself, the head man in charge, Bill McGovern, taking over for Jerry Azzinaro. I'm reading just the quotes and trying to read between the lines on some of these. And all the quotes have been pretty positive. I think Mo Osling had a really nice quote where he's bringing an NFL environment to this defense, an experience, kind of an accountability out there on the football field that we haven't seen. And, this defense, the pass defense specifically, has been an area where they've really needed to improve. Have finished in the hundreds consistently, 107th last year with allowing over 260 yards passing through the air. What has been the general vibe with Bill McGovern? Because from what I'm hearing, instead of bringing the 6 or 7 guys at a time, they're going to try to rely on their front 4 much more to generate pressure and use some of the secondary and linebackers to, cover more and avoid the big play.
There have been 2 key items I've noticed. A lot of people, a lot of the UCLA defensemen note that there's a different energy. They had energy last season, but it's a little bit, it's turned up to 11 this year. And the way they talk about McGovern, we really, it hit me the other day. You really didn't hear that about Azzinaro. They'll say, oh, he's a good coach. He helped me with this and this and that. But, they're talking about how Bill McGovern cracks jokes. He's just with, he's like kind of one of the dudes. He'll instruct guys on the field and in film sessions, and there's just an overall positive energy around Bill McGovern. If that translates into a better defensive output, that would be key. That would be awesome. But as of now, we're everyone just seems really high. A lot of the defensemen seem high on Bill McGovern.
He has been kind of the guy that we have wanted to hear about. Like he's the new defensive coordinator. It's the highlighted position. I think a lot of us were disappointed when he did come in, but all the reports thus far have been sparkling with Bill McGovern's name on it. And the word that comes to mind is personable. I feel like the players relate to him a lot.
Yeah.
He's allowed to kind of talk with them and just in a different vibe than what Asnero brought the defense, for a good, in a good way for these young kids to kind of build upon. I know you guys are very limited in what you guys can see at practice, Mike, but I wanted to kind of, hear what you guys have been hearing as well. Has there been any players that have come out and said, this guy has impressed me thus far? This guy is making plays. Wait till you see this guy come out, first weekend of September for UCLA.
It's one thing to see, I just told my podcast buddy Jake that it's one thing to see the height and maybe the width of players when they're in full pads. But the first three practice sessions when they're just in shells, you can also see more of their body shape. And what stood out to me was Jake Bobo having just such a broad, upper body, chest is just wide and just he's big. That's all. He's a big receiver, and that's something UCLA hasn't had. Excuse me, outside of tight ends, but to actually have a large receiver who's pretty quick, not the fastest guy on the team, but pretty quick and very durable and athletic. I think it's going to be huge for UCLA. And who did we talk to? I think it was Mo Osling we talked to, who said that, you got to look out for Jake Bobo. He brings it, and he's going to be tough for opposing defenses. Who else have we heard about? That was one that stood out. Jacob Sykes on the defensive line, the Harvard transfer. Yeah. Big guy, looks like a defensive lineman, but when I watched him in drills, he just moved a little bit quicker. He exploded off of his 3-point stance, a little bit faster. So I think he's going to be a bit of a surprise this season.
Yeah, and I just think the defensive line as a whole is a place to look at for, direct improvement. We're going to be going through the depth chart as a whole with Mike kind of giving his grades and guys he likes at these different spots. But first, I got to ask you the hot topic question within the UCLA fan base. It came out that Chip has offered, and his UCLA staff as a whole, had the fewest scholarship offers to current seniors that are just about to start school or going into their senior year. It's the lowest of any Power 5 school. I think it's around 54 offers. They've gotten 6 commitments, the lowest by a wide margin at that too. It's more than 8 or 9 than the next closest Power 5 team within that range. He is opted, in his opinion, to go to a transfer portal approach where he gets instant players that have, experienced college football, most likely played at Division I level, and can come in right away and be instant impact guys. Mm-hmm. And I think this is very jarring for a lot of fans to kind of figure out. But, Mike, I actually am kind of in favor of it because the old model of college football as a whole, you kind of just have to scratch that completely. I mean, NIL is now available. You can transfer and play in the same year for any guy transferring nowadays. I just think it's the old model of college football of getting these guys, developing them, waiting. There still is some credence to that, and you can still do that. But I think Chip adopting the transfer portal the way that he has and adding, some recruits that he really enjoys and likes, I think this is the future of where college football is heading. And I think Chip is – he's the innovator on offense with what he was able to do with the spread offense. I think he's going to be an innovator, when we look back at this time period in college football and go, he was the guy that utilized the transfer portal just as well as anyone. What do you think about that statement, Mike, and where do you stand on, the Chip lack of scholarships coming out.
I agree with what you were saying about, the transfer portal brings you guys who are already seasoned. They have experience. They might know you, especially if, they transfer in conference. But I definitely think that's the way a lot of teams are going. But to go full head on, I'm just cautious about it. I'm wary about it because, it may be a bit, a lot more work to recruit a high school player and then develop them over 2, 3, 4 years, but that still gives you a larger pool than what the NCAA Division I transfer portal does. Like, for example, they got Raekwon O'Neal, which was awesome, and Jalen Jeffers,
2 tackles,
but we haven't seen their talent yet, whereas the guys that just left, Alec Anderson and Sean Ryan, those guys are homegrown. So right there, at least for me, that's an argument for why you should stay with, or at least balance out a little bit more high school recruiting, because they only brought in one incoming freshman on the offensive line, and we saw, I think there were 9 active offensive linemen in spring, mostly because of injuries. There are 17 now, but a good handful of them are walk-ons. And, not to disparage the walk-ons, especially since we really haven't seen them in action, but the fact that Chip Kelly only brought in, just a few, 3 total maybe offensive linemen from the transfer portal, and there was, kind of word floating around that he was interested in certain guys, but they didn't show any interest in UCLA. For position groups like that where you need a lot of players, I still think it's good to dip your feet in both pools. But if you can get a solid running back transfer like they did with Britton Brown and Zach Charbonnet, yeah, of course that's going to work. But at the same time, I'm not in the recruiting circles either. If Chip can find a way to make this work and turn this into 9, 10, 11 win seasons, then hey, he wins at the end of the day. If UCLA is going to be hovering around 8 wins, that's good, but that's not what he was brought to UCLA for.
Totally agree on that. And I think a large portion of why the team has not been successful was the defense. And they've really made strides to improve that this offseason. And the way that I look at it is Chip goes into every offseason with a grocery list of what this team needs to be successful, what areas they need to improve. And, like you mentioned, he brought in the Britton Brown, got him drafted in the NFL. Charbonnet, next in line at the running back position. But you look around the roster, and it's like Jake Bobo, this guy's going to be a stud. And you mentioned him as, a potential breakout player for the Bruins this year. Athlon Sports had him as a second-team All Pac-12 selection. And I looked at the stats with him, 74 catches, led the ACC, close to 800 yards receiving. It was impressive, but when you really break down how impressive Duke was, or how impressive his numbers were compared to how Duke's quarterback situation was, their total passing was, I think it was under 2,700 yards with 4 quarterbacks getting time. It was 9 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That's 4 quarterbacks were the sample size, 12-game season. So was not pretty there. You get a guy like Bobo. You're looking around. I need a slot corner. Azizi Hearn step up from Wyoming. Jalen Davies come on down. You mentioned Jeffers and Raekwon O'Neal with the loss of Sean Ryan and an Alec Anderson. I am comfortable with him doing this until it doesn't work, where there's a position of need that needs to be addressed immediately, and he hasn't recruited for it, and he hasn't been able to get it. Yeah. And I think coming into this year, there's been a lot of talk about him being able to get those spots. On paper, this is the first time we get to really see Raekwon O'Neal in fall camp, but he's the projected left tackle. Yeah. Jeffers might be the projected right tackle, too, if all goes well, the Oregon transfer. So he's just been able to get a lot of guys. And if he continues to get a lot of guys that can come in and help right away, I really don't see the problem in it. So I am for it moving forward, Iron Mike. The last thing I got for you while you're here, man, we want to go through all the positions and kind of give me your takes. Like, for instance, we know Charbonnet is going to be the number one running back. I want to hear who you think the number two guy is going to be and how good you think this position group could be. We don't have to do that now. We're going to start the quarterback position and work our way around. But we will get to the running back position right after this. Quarterback room. I mean, it's probably the safest outside of running back on the team. We know who's going to be starting. Fifth-year senior Dorian Thompson-Robinson coming in. But, Mike, this is arguably the most deep, quarterback room within the Pac-12. Yeah. We saw Ethan Garbers make some run. We saw Chase Griffin, start a couple games and really hold his own back in the 2020 season. But call me crazy for this. Do you think there's a scenario where, God forbid, something would happen to DTR? Justin Martin is the next quarterback coming off the bench to start the true freshman, highly touted 4-star quarterback?
He's looked good. I've actually watched him and compared him to what he did in spring, and he looks really good, and he's taken some steps forward. I'm not sure how much of the offense he's mastered, because from what we've seen with guys like Ethan Garbers and Chase Griffin is that even in games where they were thrown into the fray, even if they had a few questionable, plays, downs, they ultimately were able to drive that car and to lead the offense. I would not put it past Chip Kelly to have to really prioritize seniority and having Ethan Garbers and Chase Griffin do anything before Justin Martin. But that doesn't. I'm not saying that he won't have a chance, because he does look good. And if anything, this deep room with Justin Martin as the fifth option, that's really good for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So, yeah, as you said, this is one of the most secure position groups on the team.
I think I'm with you. I think if something happened in the season opener, Garbers is the guy they'll throw out there. But come next season, when Garbers is quote-unquote the guy that's going to be taking the starting spot, I think there's going to be an open competition. And my hot take is I think Martin, if he reaches his ceiling and what he could potentially be, I think this guy could be a first-round draft pick at the quarterback position if all goes well for him. Given the body type, given the big arm, just what I've been able to see on tape from an 18-year-old. The 18-year-old shouldn't be able to make those types of throws that Martin can make. He's an astounding athlete. I'm really pumped to see him in the, blue and gold for the Bruins this year or at some point. So Justin Martin would be my pick to maybe take number 2. I feel you with Garbers as well at the number 2 spot. Running back, second safest position on the team, arguably just as safe at the quarterback. We know Charbonnet is the number 1 back. There's no debate there. Is there a debate for you when it comes to, Keegan Jones, Deshaun Morrell, or Christian Grubb? Like, who is your guy when it comes to the number 2 running back spot?
I'll even throw TJ Harden in there, the freshman, who's the second biggest running back on the team. You often hear that it's running back by committee. Well, for UCLA, it's running back 2 by committee, because there's no guy that has pulled away from the rest of the pack. But there's some activity there, and there's some talent there. It's just, who's going to, be able to make that leap. Maybe they need in-game experience to help out. But, there is a difference between what you see with like Zach Charbonnet, who has that natural talent and that kind of, bulldozer mentality when it comes to being, a top running back. The other guys, being a bit smaller, that doesn't help, but that doesn't mean that they don't have talent, because they all have shown, they have speed, they have moves, but, especially with the younger guys, or even Jones, who hasn't played much because of injuries, they haven't had a lot of time even on the practice field. Well, now they do. So how are they going to be able to turn that into something positive on game day? Absolutely.
And you mentioned TJ Harden, big back, 6'2", 210 pounds, coming into camp this year. You expect him to add some weight while he's at UCLA as well. So he could be as big as Charbonnet, maybe even bigger by the time he gets into the starting lineup. Chip, when we asked him at media day, it seemed like he was still heavily reliant on a Keegan Jones type. I am very interested in what we could see from Morrell. The numbers he put up in high school at Alabama were big-time numbers. A lot of those guys he's playing against are SEC talents. I want to see what Morrell can do. I think if the season started today, I would probably have Morrell as my number 2 back. But Keegan Jones is a guy that's been here. He knows the offense. He's comfortable. It could be his time to shine. So I'm excited to see how that running back room takes shape as the season progresses. Here's where it starts to get a little interesting, Mike, and it's the wide receiver room. I think we can all assure that Jake Bobo is likely the number 1 option. Granted, that takes time from a quarterback to a wide receiver to build some chemistry. But the current website I'm looking at right now, ourlads.com, it has the depth chart. It's not Cam Brown at the number 2 wideout spot. It's not Kaz Allen. It's TMA. Titus Moyakau Timalala. We're going to call him TMA from here on out because it's just too much of a mouthful. TMA is the number 2 guy, and he's an interesting prospect at the wide receiver position. We had Devin Kirkwood on the show about a month ago, and he was the first guy that he mentioned offensively when it came to the talent that the wide receivers bring. And, when a corner mentions you first, like especially the number 1 corner on UCLA coming into this year, that does have some credence. And TMA looks like he's backing that up so far. Is it crazy to say that TMA could be the number 1 option, when all is said and done in 2022 for the Bruins?
I got to see more of him because, that's a good point. That's a guy that I should, focus on a little bit more. It's just the problem with actually viewing that is difficult because all the offensive players are on the far field.
Yeah.
And all the defensive players are on the near field. So we don't get to see individual. We can with like binoculars, but it's also, it's like, who's that? Who's going, oh, nice catch. Who was that? What number was that? Do you guys see what number that is? Like, oh, that was blah, blah, blah. So it's not the best situation to to scout a player from that far away. But no, he looked like he has a nice, how can I say, a nice touch to his receiving game. But I don't know. I can't see anyone other than Jake Bobo being number 1, right now. I like what Cam Brown is doing. I'm blanking on the other one. The other receivers. Kazmir Allen. I think he's going to be really interesting because he's going to be a utility player. He might, and I think I've talked to you about this. He could, position himself as a running back or, go out into the slot. I think they're going to use him in several different ways. So it's going to be interesting, to see what type of consistency, if anything, Chip Kelly uses with his receivers. Because, he does, we know he likes the run game, but at the same time, you can't do one without the other. So who is going to step up to help you have that really effective passing game?
And, a guy we didn't even mention, Logan Loya, a veteran now for UCLA, a guy that was recruited locally, high 4-star ranking coming out of high school. He's got a chance to shine this year too. And the true freshman, I don't think there's a way they're going to be able to keep Jaden Marshall off the field, given what I've seen from his highlight tape and things like that. He's kind of the heir apparent to Kaz Allen. Like, if I am, Chip Kelly, I'm going, Jaden, follow Kaz this entire camp and season. Do what this guy does. Because when it comes to be your time, you're going to be doing pretty much a similar role that this guy does day in and day out for us. So keep an eye out for those 2 guys as well. Great receiving room. Here's now the sketchiest part of the team for me personally. And your buddy, at the Bruin Report, Chris Osgood, infamously put 5 of his 10 Bruins for the most important positions on the offensive line. The offensive line is shaky at best. Right now, according to our lads, they have Tyler Manoa starting at right tackle, a guy that was playing defense last year. So it is very tough to kind of grade out. On paper, you've got Raekwon O'Neal as the left tackle with Jalen Jeffers, the transfer, backing him up. Mafi, Duke Clemens, John Gaines, those are all, veteran-like players on the interior start offensive line. Sam Marazzo is another guy you got to keep an eye out for there. And then, Tyler Manoa at the right tackle with Garrett DiGiorgio, the true fresh or the redshirt freshman coming in likely to be the backup for the right tackle position.
Mm.
Is Tyler Manoa really going to be the starting right tackle for the Bruins? Because that just seems crazy for me.
He was working at that position mainly because UCLA didn't have that many offensive linemen in the spring. But Chip Kelly confirmed today that he has moved to left tackle, so he's going to be behind.
Oh.
He's going to be behind Raekwon O'Neal, and so yeah, it still is Garrett DeGiorgio, but it's still thin all across the board. So who's going to back up DeGiorgio? But either way, there is, like you said, there's some veterans there. There's some guys who have played heavy minutes, and then they have a few transfers. They have Raekwon O'Neal who played pretty good minutes. It's just the rest of the depth is questionable.
Yeah.
That's the shaky ground. That's the thin ice. It seems that UCLA is on, because it's like, if I think they could survive maybe one, maybe two of the starters going down or injured for a little while. Beyond that, it's going to be pretty sketchy.
And that's the area where you can get critical with Chip for not recruiting more on the offensive line, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's so thin. They've got, one guy coming in, Sam Yoon, a local product from Loyola High School, going to be taking over there. So Sam Yoon is like the lone offensive lineman coming in for UCLA, which makes it a little dicey to say the best.
Yeah.
Defensive line. This is a group that you and I have talked about both on podcast and off camera, where we feel very confident that the front four is probably going to be the best of the Chip Kelly era, given the new scheme, given the talent that was injected into this room, namely the Murphy twins. These guys are a very talented bunch, combined for 15.5 sacks last year, combined for 28.5 tackles for a loss. Players from North Texas. Yeah, it's North Texas, but these guys can ball. The guy that you've always been high on, that I've always taken your word for, Carl Jones. You like Carl Jones a lot. Give me why you think Carl Jones is going to be an impactful player on the defense for the Bruins this year.
He was pretty effective 2 seasons ago. Or was it? There was a part, I forget what season where it was, where he balled out. And then I think it was the COVID season where he kind of disappeared a little bit. And then he kind of came back last year, going tandem with Bo Calvert on that edge, outside linebacker position. But just, I think he's always had talent, but it's just putting it into effect. And I think, especially from what I saw in spring camp, he's going to be a beast. Yeah. Especially, and what is also going to make him better is the fact that at times you're going to have, the Murphys on the other side, causing congestion and, causing headaches, for that side of the line, which will allow the other side to go in. Or, having guys like, if Andrus or Toya or Approa can, take their game up another level, that's going to help out, lock in, that interior line. But I just like Carl Jones. I think he's a beast. I honestly think this would be just a devastatingly amazing defensive line if Mitchell Agude stayed. But even still, without him, I think it's still really good. And, like you said, I think it will be better than last year.
I love it, man. You got to add in Jacob Sykes, who you mentioned earlier on this podcast, and Gary Smith, the transfer from Duke, both likely taking the 2 interior defensive line spots, notably with Otito Ogbonnia moving on to the NFL from last year. Linebacking room. And, we had a big transfer in Mawasau. I think there's a lot of reason to believe he can be the same player he was at Hawaii. All the reports I've been hearing from him have been rave reviews from camp. Still a little banged up there. Ollie Kao, as we mentioned, out. Damian Sellers, we don't even know if he's on the roster still. Can you confirm or deny that?
He's not on the official roster, which is weird because that came out a few days before the first day of camp, which was 5 days ago, maybe. Either way, it came out the day before, and Damian Sellers was not on it. And Bro reported that they heard that there might be an academic casualty, and I mean, science can't confirm it, but signs point to the fact that it is probably Damian Sellers, because he's not out there on the field. He's not on the roster. So that's unfortunate. That's another talent that UCLA will be without. So yeah, the linebacker group has taken a hit, but it still has enough, and I think that's part of the Ken Norton effect too. It's like he's working. He's taking the linebacker production up a notch. So that's good, especially with bringing in Muasau, who I think he's definitely going to be that much needed leader of a middle linebacker that UCLA really hasn't had the last few seasons.
And we love it, man. John Vaughn's probably on the outside, a little Kane Madrano. You get Ollie K out back just to rotate in with those guys. And like you said, Ken Norton, that is the guy you want teaching linebackers. On top of that, Bill McGovern, most of his career in the NFL was a linebackers coach. So you're getting double coaching from two very gifted people within the linebacking community. So UCLA getting the best possible coaching out there to maximize these guys' talent. So I feel like this room is going to be very nice. Last room I got for you, Mike, it is the secondary, a group that has been long maligned, a group that has not been productive in the past. But with this group, I think this is the deepest of the Chip Kelly area. Devin Kirkwood, baller. I think he's going to be the breakout player within the Pac-12 on the defensive side of the ball this year. You got John Humphrey, a junior coming back. Blaylock, Osling. Blaylock represented UCLA at Media Day. We mentioned Azizi Hearn earlier. We mentioned Jalen Davies. This is a deep group, man. Alex Johnson had a big play within practice this week. Give me your take on the secondary, because I actually believe this could be a top 5 group in the Pac-12 if everything goes their way this year.
I hope so. That's the plan, but I have to see it to believe it. They do have more talent. It is deeper, but how I don't have any doubt about guys like Devin Kirkwood, who we've talked about all offseason. Can Mo Osling and Stephen Blaylock step up to be those really lockdown safeties, as well as leaders? Azizi Hearn has been pretty impressive. He's been that nickelback. He's been in that nickelback spot whenever they are in the nickel. But other than that, it looks like he's going to be the opposite corner on the other side of where Devin Kirkwood is. So there's talent here. Now, can they really stop the pass? That's going to be interesting, because I think a lot, especially when other teams get word of the front 7, especially the front 4 of UCLA's defense, they will probably still continue to look to pass the ball on the Bruins defense. So the Bruins defense, it has to step up and prove it can just stop passing teams in their tracks. If not, they're going to get blown out again, and it's going to be if UCLA had a better defense, they could have won this game or that game. So I think a lot of the defense's success relies on the not just the defensive backs, but the way the defensive backs and the middle linebackers work, past that 20-yard, past that 10-yard, stretch. Because I'm very comfortable with how the defensive line is right now. How is the second and third level going to work with those two units working with each other? That I think is going to be key to the Bruins' success.
Awesome. Well, Iron Mike Regalado, so nice for coming on again. Make sure to check him out. His work with the Bruin Report, you guys definitely know. He does his stuff with the Bruin Report, What's Bruin Show, the podcast they put together. And he's also a DJ. We love the DJ, KQB HLA, man, out in Boyle Heights. Our guy, Mike Regalado, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Bruins football right around the corner, man. I'm stoked.
Thank you. Yeah, it's coming up quickly. I looked at the calendar. I'm like, for some reason, I thought it was like we were very close to like August 28th. I'm like, no. I'm like transporting in time too quickly. It's like, let's pace ourselves. It's only the second week of August or third. Either way, it's gonna be here before we know it. It's gonna be quick. We're all gonna be sweating our butts off, in the non-conference, and then that wild ride, once conference season starts, to see if this Bruin team is legit. So it'll be fun.
Can't wait, brother. I'm excited to see you at some games this year. Bruin Bible, we